Everybody, it's John King. It is Friday, the 18th of April, and I am happily not knowing what day it is because I am just wrapping up a beautiful vacation, as you can see from the surroundings here. So I want to do a quick live stream. Last week I went and recorded. This week I'm going to give it a shot, hopefully go live and not have any issues dropping you. So I'm going to make this short and sweet and to the point. So let's go through today's market update and really going to talk about what happened last week, why we got there, and what's different this week and where I think we're going. So first of all, what triggered all the issues last week? It was major chaos because of the tariffs. April 2nd, the tariffs get announced and the market goes crazy. The market doesn't know what to do. It doesn't know which direction we're going, doesn't know whether we're going to see high inflation or whether we're going to see high unemployment. I talked about that a lot last week. Here's a simplified way to look at this. So this chart that we're seeing right now basically gives you an idea of what happened last week relative to the market's expectations of the Fed funds rate changing. So I'm going to look here a little bit closer. You can see right here, this is basically what the market thinks is going to happen with the Federal Reserve and whether they're going to change interest rates. So it's the market predicting what the June rate is going to be. And the market basically has been saying, hey, we think that it's going to be around 4.1%. And then high volatility last week. Trump announces the tariffs on April 2nd, and that number drops significantly. It drops to say, hey, we think that they're going to drop by at least another 25 quarter basis point or quarter percent, maybe to 3.75 instead of 4.1. That's a pretty big shift in such a short amount of time. Why does that matter? Because it came right back up. So this is the market saying, what do we think the Fed's going to do? And it came right back up and said, okay, maybe the Fed isn't going to drop as much. Oh, wait, we think they are going to drop a lot. Why? Because then Trump tripled down on China and said, we're going to make it even worse when it comes to tariffs. And then this week it's kind of calmed down. And so we're back to where the market thought things were going to be. And it really, this top part up here talks about it. And it says that basically as of April 2nd, a policy pivot created de-escalation of market turmoil. We're now playing a slower game, made possible by some measure of faith. The administration will respond to warnings in the markets. It was really, really good news that Trump pulled back on the tariffs because the markets were freaking out like, look, is this guy going to just continue going headstrong into his game plan without paying attention to what it's doing to the markets? And we clearly got an indication that no, he's not going to do that. He's going to pay attention to the market. He's going to react appropriately. And that caused the market to go from last week being rampant uncertainty and panic to this week just being rampant uncertainty. So it's a decent trade-off. It beats the fact that the markets could be way worse right now. And so that is a good sign. And we're happy to know that things have calmed down. We've got rate stability going forward. And it's steadied really because of the fact that Trump had made that call. The issue now going forward is the fight between the Fed and Trump. Now, what do I mean by the fight between the Fed and Trump? Because Trump is now fighting to have the right to fire Jerome Powell. Why is that a big deal? Because the Federal Reserve has always been appointed by the government, by the president, but not serving at the whim of the president. In other words, most cabinet, this is not a cabinet position, but cabinet positions, the president appoints them and the president can fire them. In this case, you're supposed to serve independent of the president and do what's best for the market. Well, Trump is now fighting in the Supreme Court to win the right to fire people in positions like that. And he's talking about wanting to fire Powell. That's a major concern. That could mean that the markets can't expect some stability from the Fed because now the Fed chairman can be fired if the president doesn't like him. There's a lot of implications to what that is going to mean. That's creating even more uncertainty. Not panic right now, but it's creating even more uncertainty. And the Fed came out this week, Jerome Powell came out this week and said very, very clearly, look, we know we're going to have both the problems that we have to face. We're going to have an issue with high inflation and we're going to have an issue with high unemployment. And we have to pick between the two because their tools are very limited. They basically play with interest rates and monetary policy, and what they do to help with inflation hurts employment. What they do to help employment hurts inflation. And so you're basically picking one of the two children saying, hey, I can do one thing to help this kid, but it's going to hurt the other one, or I can help this kid, but it's going to hurt the first one. And the Federal Reserve, Jerome Powell, said, I'm going to give priority to inflation. Inflation is more important than unemployment, but I'm actually going to focus on the one that is the furthest away from where we want it to be. So if they're both equally a problem, inflation is going to be what they're going to focus on, and that is not good news for us. because to fix inflation, what we saw back in 2022 and 2023, they raised interest rates significantly. So the Federal Reserve is telling us there's a good chance we're going to raise interest rates significantly to fix inflation. And so uncertainty is going to remain high. You've got to watch this battle between Jerome Powell and Trump. We've got to figure out what's happening with inflation. And it's not inflation that's coming out this month. It's inflation next month and the month after, because it's inflation created by the tariffs. And it's going to take a few months for that to come into play. So right now, the markets are going to be guessing what they think inflation is going to look like based upon what's happening right now, because all of the inflation reports are at least a month behind. So we have at least 1 to 2 months before we're going to see a real idea of what inflation is going to look like with the tariffs in play. How much of the tariff is going to be passed on to the consumer is the unknown. All right. 2 last things I want to cover. One of them is I just launched a podcast. Yay! So this podcast is not your average mortgage podcast. So it is called From Profits to Properties. It is designed for business owners. My goal is, I have been professionally coached for 15 years. I've been a professional coach for the last 10. I've been in, leading groups of business people for the last 8 years, giving them ideas, tips, and tricks on how to grow their business. And now I want to provide it to the general public. So that's going to be one of the 2 things I'm going to cover on every episode. The second thing is how to take those increased profits that you're making as a business owner and how to turn those into long-term wealth in real estate. You don't have to simply be a business owner. If you're in sales, if you're in a key position, this would be valuable to you. If you are leading people, you will get great value out of it. Please subscribe. The link is down below, but you can go to fromprofitstoproperties.com. Again, the link is in the description down below. Last thing that I want to cover here before I get too hot, because it's hot out here, is let's go over here to Dream for All. So a quick Dream for All update, huge release this week in Dream for All. We had a bunch of people telling me over the last couple of days that they've moved down significantly or they got vouchers. I think that Cal Halfa is having more cancellations than they were expecting. I think that they are trying to run the numbers and make sure that they're staying ahead of this and make sure they have enough vouchers out there. And I think that there are fewer people succeeding in utilizing their vouchers than they thought. That is what I'm seeing with a lot of my clients is challenges in finding properties. Condos have been a nightmare. If you're looking at condos, check out a video I did about 2 months ago, back in February, about the crisis in condominiums. It is continuing. More problems with condominiums, more problems with people buying at the lower end of the price range, and that is creating issues with Dream for All buyers. So I think that's why we're seeing more buyers, more Dream for All vouchers being released. Does that mean that we're going to continue to see more? It is hard to say. We did just have the April 1st quarterly turnover where you had people who had vouchers before that lost them. So maybe they were waiting a little bit in order to run those numbers. I don't know. But I'm hoping to get more information next week and let you guys know next Friday. Anyway, that is it. That's all I have for you today. It doesn't look like anybody has any questions. So if you're watching recorded, please type in your questions and I'll respond to them later. Hope everybody has an absolutely wonderful day. I'll be back in the office on Monday and we'll talk to y'all soon. Bye-bye.